Dungeons and Dragons is very important to me and has been a very important part of my life, and I'm pretty sure that that's no big surprise. I mean, just a quick cursory glance at my YouTube channel and the fact that I tend to be a little more vulnerable than I probably should in my videos about these kind of things makes it incredibly obvious. It's been an outlet for me where I didn't have one. It's been an ability to explore things that I would never had the chance to explore. It's been very good for me, but it's also been detrimental. I think D&D is an amazing tool to be able to experience things you never had and help with your mental health, but at the same time, it's a tool, and a tool can be used for dangerous things as well as good ones. I want to talk about exactly what D&D has done for me and the dangers to avoid. I want to talk about how Dungeons & Dragons is a way to truly explore yourself in the right environment. So let's talk about that. I'll start this off with my usual disclaimers. The fact is, I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm not an expert on mental health. I'm not an expert on Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing for a very long time, and I do understand people to a certain level. But never take anything I say as law, because the truth is, I'm really not an expert in, well, anything. In fact, you could just call me a jack of all trades, but certainly a master of none. So with that being said, it's very obvious that I don't want you to take everything I say as law. This video is for a conversation. It's for me to be able to get my thoughts out there. It's not just to be something that you take and run with. But with my usual yada yada disclaimers out of the way, here's what I want to talk about today. Dungeons & Dragons allowed me to be able to explore who I truly was when nothing else in my life ever did. See, I grew up in a religious background, as a lot of people who play D&D usually have, and there have been many times where I've looked back and wished that I had D&D when I was growing up, as it would have been an amazing outlet for my creative urges that I just never got. Growing up, I was considered the sporty kid, which is funny now that I think about it, as I'm pretty short and kind of scrawny. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, specifically Korean Taekwondo, and I taught Korean Taekwondo for many years, as well as learning a few different martial arts on the side in a non-official capacity. I played football for almost the entire time I was in high school, and I did a bunch of various athletic activities on the side. I really put a lot of my value into that, and the fact that I was able to, because none of my other siblings really could. It wasn't their interest, so it was something that was special to me. But on the inside, all I wanted to do was create, and I never had an outlet for it. I tried many times to write books, but just couldn't figure it out. The ideas were in my head, but not the knowledge to write the words out, as I was never really good at any studious things. I wanted to make music so badly, but my attention issues made it so difficult for me to be able to learn music that I eventually just gave up because there wasn't a lot of ability for me to do that. I would make up these fantastical stories with my best friends and try and act them out in some capacity, but just never had the ability to create in the way that I really wanted to. And I cannot help but think that if I had just known about D&D, that if I had had the chance to be able to act that out, maybe my life would have gone just a little bit differently. So when I managed to discover D&D with a bunch of friends while I was in college, it was just eye-opening is the best way to put it. I've explained before the story where I was able to DM for the first time and looked around the room and saw the excitement in my players' eyes, my friends, and realized that was what I wanted to do. This is what was important to me. I wanted to create and have people care about what I created, and D&D for the first time allowed me to do that in a capacity that just was not possible before. Not only that, it allowed me to create in a space where other people around me cared about what we were creating and also could help. And that in itself was just something I had never considered possible. I mean, the closest I had had before that was writing collaborative stories with my friends, and as I expressed, none of us were really that good at writing. And then it began to evolve. It began to allow me to understand other people and see from their points of views. It allowed me to understand those in the LGBTQ+ community and see where they might be coming from. It allowed me to understand those dealing with mental health issues and start to understand what that might be like. It allowed me to connect with my friends on a level I didn't realize was possible, and worst of all, it allowed me to begin to explore myself. And it helped me realize that the person who I had pretended to be all throughout high school was just not me. It was a facade, an illusion, something I put up to protect myself. Because I had this creative drive that I had no outlet for, and no ability to express, and so therefore, I pretended to be somebody else so that everybody approved of me. So D&D, in no small part, and this is not an exaggeration in the slightest, changed my life. But I am making this video as a warning that it is not a catch-all. It does not fix everything, and it can be dangerous if you are not careful with it. See, D&D is a collaborative experience. It allows you to be vulnerable and connect with other people, which is a constant theme on my channel that I consistently praise. And I'm not backing down on that either. That vulnerability is one of the best things that ever happened to me, but unfortunately, it also led me to doing something I did not realize. And guys, I will be 100% real here. This is not an issue I have seen in only myself. See, as I began to DM and I began to have other people care about the stories that were being created, that's where I began to put my value. I guess the reason that I'm making this video, aside from the fact that it's late at night and I've had a really long day and just needed to be able to talk, is to make it clear what dungeon masters can go through and hopefully show some dungeon masters they don't have to put themselves through this, and show some players that this is a real thing that could potentially be affecting their dungeon master, and to hopefully look out for it. And that thing that I'm alluding to is the fact that I began to put a lot of my value into running a good game. For somebody who had no creative outlet, no ability to create things that others cared about, running a good game was the only thing that I could do. It became everything to me that my players had fun. It became everything to me that everyone enjoyed what was going on and everyone continued to care and have the same amount of investment. And guys, humans are not infinite. Our emotions are not infinite. People cannot care all the time. They cannot be invested 24/7, and neither can you. To put my value in making sure I run a perfect game every time is inherently setting myself up for failure. It's putting an impossible task in front of me and expecting to nail it every single time, and it just won't happen. It never will. But I needed it to, and so I continued to try harder and harder and push myself harder and harder. And like I said, humans, I am not infinite in my energy and creativity. I pushed myself to the point of burnout and pushed straight past that point. And the further that I went, the less engaging my games began to become, which meant I became that much harder on myself. It was a vicious, infinite cycle. I wish I had something I could say that would be like, hey, here's the fix to this. Here's how you can no longer do this. But the simple fact of the matter is I still struggle with this, though to a lesser extent. Thanks to YouTube and a few other creative projects, I do have that creative release and I can feel better, but I still just want my players to have a good time and put a lot of my value in that inherently happening. But that's just selfish on so many reasons, isn't it? I mean, not only is it saying that I must run the perfect game, which is impossible, it's putting it on my players to every time have fun. And don't get me wrong, we all come to the table to have fun. We all come to have a great time. But life happens. Shit happens. And to expect your players to have a great time every single time, to always be perfectly invested, is unrealistic to them as well. The point of creating something is to feel that drive and to all come together and make something beautiful. And if you don't feel the drive to make it, then why do it? And that doesn't mean just give up either. I as a DM have just felt totally uninspired and run a session anyways, and it went amazing. It went awesome. Nothing like I would have expected. But it does mean sometimes you need to stop and look in the mirror and ask yourself, why are you doing this? Is it to make sure that everybody at the table has a good time? Or is it to make sure that you run a perfect game? Because here's the thing about making sure everybody at the table has a good time. You are at the table too. I see perfectionism being a problem at the table because a lot of people seem to expect it. And I've seen a lot of people point at Critical Role for that, but I just don't think that's true. Yes, Critical Role sets a high standard, but it's so obvious that their game is not perfect. And the things that I see people attribute to perfect has nothing to do with Critical Role. The simple fact of the matter is that we want our tables to be the best, the brightest experience, the most unique, the one that everyone will talk about above anything else, because if you're like me, that's what you find value in. But let me share a little bit of a secret. Every single table, as long as people had fun, is the best, is the brightest, the one that people will talk about. Because there is absolutely no two tables that will ever be alike. No two stories told a second time over. That's the beauty of this hobby. So maybe it's less about making sure that you run the perfect game and making sure as you look around the table that everybody's creating a wonderful story. I'm not unwilling to admit this may be a problem that only I've experienced, and if that's the case, so be it. But I have seen across social media so many people talking about how much pressure they put on themselves as a DM, as a player, to make sure the game goes perfectly, to make sure to put all this pressure that you are the best you can be, which is good. It's inherently good to push you forwards, but the simple fact of the matter is when you work out, you have to give your muscles time to rest and recuperate. So too must you give yourself time to do so. No one can handle stress for that long. No one should. So I guess I'm making this video as a PSA to please look around your table. Make sure that everyone is having a good time, a safe time, is able to rest and enjoy what's going on. And if they aren't, take a step back and figure that out with them. There's no magic solution. Skipping out on a session may not be the right move, maybe it would be, but please make sure everybody at your table is safe. And to my players who I do know watch this channel, thank you all for caring about each other. Thank you for caring about me. And thank you for continuing to be invested in the game despite all the complications. This video is equally a PSA and a love letter to all of you. So everybody, please go out into the world and make it your own. Don't forget to have a wonderful day. And at your table, please don't forget to play your role, because we all need each other in order to create the wonderful hobby that it is that we experience. See y'all next time.